we've had it before where somebody disclosed that there was no water ever found in the basement. And the home inspector came in and said 3 feet of the basement was replaced because all the boarding is stamped. Yeah. So it showed that all this stuff was replaced, and they disclosed there's no water damage ever in the basement. So that was a huge red flag, and we just walked away from the property. Welcome back to another Bamford & Co. podcast, Beyond the Keys. I'm here with my awesome brother, Ryan Bamford. Thanks for joining me once again, Ryan.
Oh, what a treat.
Today we're going to discuss home inspections. And I just had a home inspection on one of my listings, and they came back with a list of things that they wanted my seller to do. And in today's market, I mean, it's a lot different than it was 5 to 10 years ago, right? Depending on what it is and what you can ask for. But if you were looking at it from, let's start with you explaining a seller's point of view. If you have a listing and I'm the buyer's agent and I do it and I start bringing you lists of things that I want you to take care of. So I'd like to take care of some weather stripping. I'd like to take care of a leaky faucet. Maybe even though something's properly working like a fireplace, I want you to give it a service because you don't like a little bit of, or I don't like with my clients, some of the, I guess, decoloration of the glass. So what do you look at and how do you coach your clients to explain, first off, what you to expect from a buyer's point of view? Because I think a lot of times they look at just from a seller's point of view, but from a buyer's point of view, and how does that look as the listing agent?
Well, in today's market, things have completely changed. It's like, when we're not dealing with, when we have more supply, when there's not as much demand out there, obviously that changes what the perspective is from the seller and what they're willing to maybe do and to rectify some of these issues.
Right.
Now, from my perspective, when it comes down for acting as a seller's agent, and we're looking at actually big ticket items. So things that need to be in working order upon possession would be things like furnace, water heater, making sure that the shingles are in good shape, some of the things that are also unseen as well. So certain things like that I can't see visually is that usually we're taking into consideration that, hey, the shingles are 15 years old or they're at the end of their life expectancy. We're already, from a buyer's perspective, is that we're already negotiating that into our price.
So you're looking at the same thing on the seller side.
So on the seller,
or you expect it from them.
So I think it'd be the unforeseen things that are coming up. If maybe there's a cracked heat exchanger, like I said, the water heater's not working properly. Maybe there is a leak in some of the plumbing that needs to be addressed. Those are the kind of things that I would be looking at and saying, legally, is it from our documentation, is it, mechanical items have to be in working order upon possession. Right? It doesn't mean that have to be in top working order, but they have to be in working order, right? So those are the big things that I'm looking at when it comes down to it from a seller's perspective. From a buyer's perspective, I can understand how people want all these things to be addressed. And if they're a new home, 100% you can get that. But when a used home is that you don't get those options in today's market to be able to ask them to bring it up to 100%, in perfect working order.
So you're still looking at it from they should have caught all the cosmetic things, right?
For sure.
Like if someone's viewing a property and you see that the shingles are old, you're writing an offer as those shingles are old. You're not waiting for the home inspector to come back and renegotiate. Because, some agents look at it as like, okay, we're going to win this bid. We're going to bid way over list, but then don't worry. We'll come back and negotiate after the fact. Yeah. But as the listing agent, what would you tell me?
Take a hike, go pound sand.
Okay, but we probably wouldn't. We might say that, but at the same, nicer.
For sure, but it's not something that they're willing to do at that point. And there's more demand out there that someone else is willing to take it, and realistically, you could take it to the market and disclose all those things that that happened with the first inspection, and still be in a better position than going back and actually rectifying all these issues, right? So, in other words, I'd say no, probably, but
So it is a good perspective because the thing is, like, okay, so they're in a multiple offer scenario on a lot of these homes, and it's like, so you're going to lose this house for $3,000. So like, okay, then you lost the house. Now go try to bid on another one. You're probably not going to get it, and you might have to pay more. So the seller is usually in control right now after any home inspection, unless there is something major that could collapse
big
the
ticket
deal.
items. Is that I still think that things like, foundations, moisture, those kind of issues, and regular mechanical, even dishwashers if they're leaking or something like that, those things are all should be addressed by the seller, right?
So, but I guess we're looking at it from an experienced agent point of view, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I was trying to explain to someone the other day of how many home inspections I've been to. I don't even know, over 20 years. And you look at it and you've been like, I could do 90% of a home inspection. And we can catch those things prior to when we're walking through that property, right? So I'm expecting that of the agent, that they viewed those things, and that's something that they've discussed with their client, especially in this case scenario, right? So they're not expecting it. But it is a good, breakdown of kind of on the seller side.
Yeah, and I think that, from the buyer's side is you also need to be educating your clients and saying, this is what you can expect. Like, I sit down with them prior and say, guys, we're looking for big ticket items only. We've looked at everything else. We know that the shingles we know that the furnace is 10, 12 years old already too. So we know that that's at the end of getting closer to the end of its life expectancy. Like all those kind of things should be addressed with the buyer prior to actually writing the offer, and that's where they would come up with those values by taking all those things that need maybe some updating or some work to be able to rectify the issues that needs to be done prior to writing your offer and knowing what you're getting yourself into.
I totally agree. I mean, on the seller side, we were listing a townhouse and they didn't do a home inspection, but I did a walkthrough as a vacant property. I did a walkthrough the day before just to make sure everything's good. And for some reason, I was like, you know what, I really got to go. And we should always check the furnace room, right? The utility room. But I went and checked it. Water heater is leaking into the drain, which was perfect because it was actually leaking into the drain, not everywhere else. Had to make some calls, disclosed it to the other agent. I said, you know what, water heaters, gone. I'll talk to my clients. We'll figure out a price point that's good. He came back with a little bit higher. We found an affordable water solution and someone to be able to do it. But it's two agents working together, but disclosing it, so it wasn't a major surprise to them. Unfortunately, to my clients, if it happened 2 days after possession, it would have been the responsibility of the buyer to take that on. But because it happened prior to possession, we needed to then settle that out and replace that. We didn't have the time to replace the actual unit. We just had to the lawyers had to just do the credit to the buyer.
Right.
On the buying side, when we're sitting down with our clients, a lot of times I say, just like you said before, but I say like a home inspection isn't a shopping list. You're not going in there and picking out all the small little things that you're going to make a list on. You've seen those, we're seeing those. And as we pick apart more properties until you find that one that you love, we're going to notice these things, right? And so foundation, water damage, and then mechanical. Those are your major ones that I look at it. So I agree with from the seller's point of view, I look at it the same way as the buyer's perspective. It goes both ways. So this is what I expect. Sometimes we have to make the seller realize, you know what, as a home inspector, their job is to go in and pick everything apart about the property. And if they're picking apart weather stripping and leaky faucets and some things that nobody's seen before, this is a great inspection. Just because, if somebody walked in and your home inspector's sitting there and the home inspector said, didn't find anything.
They're paid to find things.
They're paid to find something, right? You would fire the home inspector on the spot if they said, no, house is perfect. Even new homes, you go through them and there's things that they need to be done, right?
And speaking about what they find and how they disclose it on papers, and I know that you do the same thing with me as well. And I had this conversation with the listing presentation today, and we were talking about how I, preview what the buyer's agent is saying and what the home inspector has found. Is that I take it with a grain of salt. Right? Because it's a perspective. It's one person's perspective. They're not plumbers. They're not electricians, right? Is that there's certain things that maybe is miscommunicated, I think, between the actual home inspector and then the purchaser, right? And I think that communication is is crucial, because how you word something to say that, hey, it might need some service, or it's not functional, it's not, like just how they word it is sometimes confusing. So I know, us walking through the property, and we actually have those, conversations with, pillar to post, or maybe that other home inspection company that the buyers are using. That goes a long way, because we can kind of educate them and say, hey, this can be taken care of. This is a seller's thing. This is a buyer's thing. And kind of guide them through that process.
Yeah,
right?
I really appreciate a home inspector that gives the facts and doesn't give the illusion that this could be 10 times worse than what it is, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, oh, there might be some surface mold on this, and that's what they found, and there's no moisture behind, so there's no reason to think it's mold throughout the whole back, and it could be in the ceiling, and it could be in the floor. Right. And it's like sometimes it scares buyers without giving them the real facts. Yeah. And if you really think it's that bad, then have somebody else that's a professional come in and take a look at it, right? But unfortunately, in today's market, I mean, many people will say, well, take it or leave it, because we'll just move on to the next people that are interested, right? So you just have to make that decision on if it's a make or a break in today's market.
There's not much renegotiating once a deal has been, once it's gone conditional. Right. Right now, unless it's a big ticket mechanical, or people are walking away because what they found is just not acceptable.
Right. It's interesting that a lot of times we'll sell a house and we'll go to sell it 5 to 10 years down the road, and I think people are getting better at this. But we'll go in, and the exact same stuff that was the problem when they bought the house is the exact same things that they've let go. So my thought on a home inspection is it's a to-do list, right? So it's a to-do list to where you're like, okay, what do we need to do immediately? Maybe change the grading, maybe put on longer downspouts, fix these things that's going to take moisture away from your home. Yep. That's the first thing, because foundation and water is preventative. Yep. And then it's like, okay, what's my list to be able to do over the next 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years, right? Yep. These are things I'm going to have to, okay, shingles. Maybe they have 10 years left. Well, build that into your budget of what you're going to have to spend on it, and then look at maybe deals that come up, or whatever the case scenario is, right? But most people just throw that home inspection into their drawer and never look at it again. So I'd say, like, make a list. You just bought a home. There is a lot of maintenance to a house that most people don't think about, and it's like you really need to pay attention.
Well, and keeping up with the small things, being preventative actually saves you a lot of money in the long run. Right?
Yeah, like painting windowsills, rather than them rotting out and have to be totally redid.
For sure.
Redone.
But that checklist is a great thing, is especially on possession, and to be able to bring those kind of things out as another reference point, because there's a lot of moving parts that have happened in that 1 to 3 months when you've purchased that property, the emotions, getting everything ready, moving. There's a lot of factors that come into that. So having that and keeping that information as a to-do list is extremely important.
And I think at least we try to encourage our sellers to do this. Is like, people always think, okay, possession's three months down the road, I don't need to do anything. And it's like, no, you need to, like, they're like, how good should we leave it? And I'll be like, how good would you want it if you were the ones buying it? So leave it in the same shape you would. So take the maintenance still to the yard, take the maintenance to keeping on the downspouts, all those other things, because you want it to be a great experience for the person that is moving into your home that you've loved, right? And so I think that's probably one of the most important things that we sometimes see fail. And I think it's the communication between the listing agent and their clients to let them know the shape of the property, and then doing those walkthroughs before, so that there is no surprises. Or we catch things like that water heater, so that nobody's surprised, and at least we're able to be hands-on and communicate in a professional way for the industry.
For sure. And that's really important for us to be doing those walkthroughs as well, just because if there is anything problem that is an issue on possession day, is that, like you said before, 2 days down the road and the clients haven't been notified about it, and next thing they're footing the whole bill, because they can't prove that it was like that on possession. So, there's a lot of ways that we protect our clients' best interests and I guess money in the transaction just by doing those walkthroughs as well.
Is there anything else you'd want to add regarding home inspections? And
I would do your research on all the home inspectors that you're using, right? Is that I wouldn't just go to a family friend and those kind of things.
I always find the interesting ones that are like, oh, we found the cheapest home inspector. I was like, that's probably I don't know if that's the best idea.
I really suggest to my clients is that thermal tells a lot about an inspection. Is that, you know, like you said, is that we can tell 90% of the issues with the home as we walk through it, just because of our experience and how many homes that we walk through on a regular basis. But yeah, to me, that's a big factor.
That thermal's made a big difference. I mean, you have to look at it. They're just humans, like home inspectors. They walk through the property for 2.5 to 3 hours. They do have a process. They check as many things as they possibly can, but they can't see through walls. They can't do these things. And they sometimes can't tell if they've had water damage. So those thermal imaging for insulation and those factors are seeing if something's wet or there's heat loss.
It says more than what people think that it's going to tell you, right? Just because the insulation condenses when it's been wet. You know, if we do have a crack in the foundation that's pretty big, is that we can see kind of some of those things. I've had brand new houses that bedroom hasn't been insulated upstairs in the attic, and they just forgot a whole bedroom, right? So like
I've had it to where the garage wasn't insulated, even though
it was probably heated too.
And the builder was like, I paid for it.
Right.
So then the builder then phoned the insulation company and they came back and then they pumped it back in there. But he was just like, I mean, everyone's humans. There's mistakes that happen. We just want to make sure that we put as much due diligence into checking these things so that you're informed when you go to be able to buy that property.
One other thing is that home inspections, I still do them on new builds. And I suggest my clients is that once completion's done on it, that we still do a walkthrough. That's the way we found the one bedroom that wasn't insulated in the attic, right? I do think that there's some things that get missed throughout it, and it's not a bad thing for us to be able to do. And I think a lot of that thermal side of things is probably it's a major factor. To me, I think that gives you a lot more information that you just can't see.
I also think, like nowadays, we don't make it subject to a property condition disclosure, but we include it as a term. So being able to view that, we're able to then see what they've disclosed about their property and be able to match that to the home inspection. We're kind of like private investigators to a point, right? We're trying to grab as much information as we can to make an informed decision on, is there an issue? We've had it before where somebody disclosed that there was no water ever found in the basement. And the home inspector came in and said 3 feet of the basement was replaced because all the boarding is stamped. So it showed that all this stuff was replaced, and they disclosed there's no water damage ever in the basement. So that was a huge red flag, and we just walked away from the property. We've had it other times where the property condition disclosure statement said, you know what, we did have water in this one corner. We had a heavy rain. We didn't have the downspouts on. We had water in there. It got in one time. We've kept the downspouts on. We've never had any issues since. Our home inspector is able to back that up. We're able to see, because I mean, it happens. I mean, my on my house, I turned on my underground sprinklers, and in the spring went on a trip, came back, and there must have been still some thaw happening in that, and they had cracked, and so I had 3 feet of water in between my house and my neighbor's. And I was like, oh, amazing. So that water got in, but no history before, but things do happen, right? So that would be something you disclose. And then, I mean, things just do happen. So that PCDS matching with that home inspection, if you can even do that in today's market, because a lot of times we're seeing no conditions. So,
well, and I think it's just also just gathering as much valuable information that we can, and then making an educated decision from there.
Even pulling a PID, so a City of Saskatoon property information disclosure, we can pull that information and just make sure that all the right information is disclosed on permits, and if there's other things, and match that also the property condition disclosure as well too. So it's just kind of, it's doing our due diligence as realtors to cover that side of it.
For sure. Is there anything else that you'd like to enlighten our viewers about home inspections?
No, I think we've enlightened enough.
Okay. Well, thanks again for another episode of Beyond the Keys. It's Greg and I here. If you are looking to buy and sell in today's market, we'd love to sit down with you and kind of give you a strategic marketing plan or process for the purchasing side. So please reach out to either Greg or myself. Thanks for viewing.